Tony.
Thank you, Ange. Always good to see you there. Good to see the dads. Talking shh. Need to talk some shh. But yeah, we had the dads tonight. They were doing the 50s music. Now that was not always the biggest time frame for me in music, but definitely I enjoy playing some of that and hearing some of that. Good to see what they came up with there. Saw some
So
surprises on the list and all that. But
a lot of the 50s music had early influence on me. You know, in the 70s, a lot of the rock that I heard when I was really young came from the 50s. That
Right.
piano kind of rock.
Mm-hmm. That's a good style too. Now I have something for us, a video actually, of Matt Johnson. We've looked at some of his videos before from Jamiroquai. And this is him, there's no talking in the video, it's just him playing. And he's playing on a Waldorf Iridium. I wasn't sure if you were familiar with that one. It's pretty cool. Let me go ahead and get that fired up here. And we're going to share the sound on that too, because that's always a good idea.
Now, the Waldorfs were electric pianos?
Let's see here. Yeah, this is a synthesizer essentially. Let's bring that there and get this out of there too. And then, let me know how the volume is. This is about halfway through.
I see the zoom in your desktop.
Well then, we should do that the other way then. Instead, it's got my monitors reversed. How about that?
Nice background, too.
Thank you. Nice and clean, right? Always like the nature scenes. Now,
nice and natural.
Now it should be a keyboard.
Oh, this is the new Waldorf.
Good stuff.
I know what you're talking about now.
the Waldorf Iridium. And that is Matt Johnson from Jamiroquai doing that one. His channel is right there. Matt Jensen Jamiroquai. And just, I
That
always
is a
love
great
seeing.
video.
Mhm. Yep,
That's a great one to sell that thing. I want one now.
exactly. What I like most is watching the technique, the way that he's playing the low parts with the left hand and also reaching the pinky over and doing the stuff with the mod wheel there. That was something that really stood out to me. And he's
Yeah.
not really adjusting most of the other things very often, but that is big.
Well, you notice the things he was just adjusting on the side. The sound sculpting
Yep.
on that is beautiful. Like the way he would just give, some of the sharper sounds a
hmm
pad just
Yep.
by like adjusting, the modulation.
hmm
That thing has such nice analog sounding squishiness to it. Those
hmm
piano patches that had that little bit of strings behind them,
hmm
beautiful sound.
Yeah. And even the ones that, like you were saying, a little bit sharper or a little bit more of an edge to them, like even those, like he would start it in with that and grab your attention with it, and then like mellow it back out again with an adjustment over there. Very
Well,
cool.
you notice how he was like pushing up on the key, like
Yep.
some of the ones when he would get that like squishy modulation, he was playing on the top of the key,
hmm
and that affects the velocity, which is what's triggering all that wow sound.
Yeah. And
You
that's one
just
of those where
play
you really got
higher
to
up
get to,
on the
and
key.
you got to get to know your instrument. That's another one of those where it would probably take a while to dive in and really get into the functionality of everything in there. But if you just focus on one thing at a time, and the mod wheel and the pitch wheel are definitely big to incorporate into your playing because you can change so many things with different patches with those.
See, I almost thought for a second he was using that that mod ring we looked at
Right.
last year
Yep.
that lets you like do it with the ring moving your
Yeah, you can
finger,
move and
because
then pull back
the
up.
the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
he played,
hmm
the way he was playing it looked like that gold ring he had. I was like, maybe it is one,
hmm I don't
but I
think it is.
think
I think it's
that
just a wedding ring,
keyboard
but
definitely,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm sure the
I think
keyboard
that
would like it. But
keyboard,
yeah,
the velocity is because he's playing higher up on the key, and the way it hits changes.
sure. Yeah, you hit way down at the end of the key, and you have all that travel to get it to land
Yeah.
slowly or what have you. But if you want to get it to really hit sharp, if you hit up on the top of the key, it's much less travel, less distance to travel. You're hitting very sharply and hard at the top of the key. You'll definitely ride it faster that way.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
definitely different feel.
It's like playing higher on the neck.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
get a different action.
Yep. You choking up a little bit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Brings the action down, makes it a little faster or easier to play, depending on what you're
That's
doing.
why he was all the piano patches that he played. That's when he was playing at the bottom.
hmm
And then anytime he wanted it to get that like synthetic layer,
hmm
he was just moving closer and closer up the top.
Yeah. Now I had a couple other videos for today that were actually kind of fit in with that 50s theme that we were talking about earlier. The first one was about a design that never really got built. It was I believe they called it a Fender Tulip design, and I'm sorry, a Gibson Tulip. We will check it out and will correct me there. But it's a very interesting design. It was from the 57 that they sketched it out. This is from Paul David's channel. We've looked at a number of things from his channel before as well. This one is him kind of checking out and going over some of the differences or some of the things that are unique about this particular instrument. And he got to actually play this instrument now that they've made it. So it was pretty cool that this thing has been
So
sitting
they
around. I think
did it didn't get built. It didn't
it
get
didn't
built
get built.
then,
It
but
was
now
sketched
they're
out.
making it.
Right. And then they made it, and they just recently, at one point, they talk about how they needed a certain CNC machine, I guess, in order to do the rounding, the way that the bottom of the body is basically very rounded. And then as you come up the side, it gets to where it flattens out to be a flat side. And in order to get that very complex curve going, I think they needed a machine that literally just came in just in time to do this guitar for this project. But very cool that after all that time, like
So
they sketched it way
basically
back then. Hmm?
it didn't get built because of difficulty to manufacture, not because it was a failed instrument.
Well, I don't think it was a failed instrument. I think it was actually still an instrument concept at the time, and they just never went through with it. But then it kind of resurfaced, and somebody was like, we should check this out, and they actually built it. But we can actually see in the video whether it was something that was a technological problem that they had, or whether it was more of just, great idea, but not for right now, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or too expensive.
Yeah, but it's a really cool look too. Like he compares it to like looks like it comes right out of the Jetsons. And I'm like, yeah, it really does. So let's see here. If this is now, is that the correct screen again? We'll make sure we get that going here. And
Yep.
this would be.
Ooh, I
You
do
remember
like
Paul?
that shape.
Yeah, exactly. They call it like I think it was a double tulip cutaway. The way it does it that way.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Paul Davids is the channel. We've looked at his channel before and seen some of his videos. So let's check it out.
So this is a sketch from 1957 to the date 65 years ago, and I'm about to play this guitar.
So when I was going through our archives, it literally fell out of a portfolio. And I was like, does that say T.M. McCarty? What the heck? To me, the history that's present when you pick it up, when you look at it, it gives me goosebumps, honestly. It's just so cool. The archives were all kept in this one specific area that was pretty dust covered. It felt like an archaeologist, like digging a historical site or something. Certainly the most interesting was this one cabinet. There was a label on it that just said experimental. I'm like, all right, this one sounds cool. So yeah, I totally dug into that one, and some of it was like from all different eras, going back to the 1900s. There were some designs that old in there. When King Tut's tomb was discovered, the archaeologists, peeked through a little hole first, and they asked him what he saw, and he said, "Things, wondrous things." Like he was just like stunned, right? And it literally fell out the bottom of the portfolio onto the floor, and we're like, "Whoa, what is this?" It was all the proof I needed to move forward with the archive collection idea.
So here we are. This is the Theodore, and I'd love to see your first reactions in the comments below. So make sure to let me know what you think after gently hitting that like button, of course. So here is the actual sketch, or a copy thereof, that Ted McCarty drew. One of the most innovative guitar entrepreneurs in history, by the way. He drew this 65 years ago to the date, and after Matt discovered it again a few years back, Gibson turned it into a guitar you can actually hold and play. So I personally think that this guitar looks absolutely fascinating. The rounded edges, the double tulip cutaway, the walnut stripe down the middle, that retro futuristic aesthetic from the 50s. It's very present on this guitar. This could be a prop in the Jetsons, right? It's maybe because I'm Dutch, but they refer to this guitar as the tulip. I mean, the chunky neck pickup versus that bright, fierce bridge pickup. Kind of digging that vibe.
That's another thing that he called out in the drawing, is that round over on the whole bottom side of the body.
Yeah, that's
which was represented in the drawing, and it took everything we had to be able to do that, because the only way we could get that specific radius, the rounding moving to the flat, was to use a 5-axis CNC machine, which we ordered years ago, and it arrived just in time.
Oh.
So yeah, so it took a lot to be able to do that body exactly like Ted had intended.
Radius to be as large as possible, and I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. This makes the guitar very comfortable, by the way. Somehow it feels very balanced, sitting down, but also standing up. So this guitar is named after Theodore Ted McCarty. He came on board at the Gibson company in the late 40s, and immediately he brought many innovations to the table. It's not for nothing they call his time there the McCarty Golden Era. Looking at the competition, Fender, McCarty knew they had to step up their electric guitar game, introducing the Gibson Les Paul in 1952. And although it's not his name on it, he obviously had a huge hand in the development and the design of the model, but also the refinement of it. So now fast forward a bit to 1957, the Theodore.
Potentially, this was a continuation of the Les Paul. The wrap tail and the P90s on the drawing tell us this was intended to be more of a budget model, more of a student model. You know, his drawing it wasn't a blueprint, it was just a crude sketch. So we had to take some creative liberties with that and had to try to channel not only what we thought Ted's intention was, but what realistically Gibson would have done with that idea at the time.
So this guitar definitely feels more youthful, almost frivolous to me. It's easier to pick up, easier to carry around, easier to play around on stage and to swing around with. It's lightweight, as I said before, and I do really love the sound of those P90s in combination with the wraparound bridge. It does something to the sound. That's what I mean, playful. Yeah.
P90s really haven't changed much since they debuted in the late 40s. A very fierce sounding, fiery sounding pickup. Like that's usually how, you know, I hear it described. But some of my favorite artists of all time played P90s. So like to me, it's just like a very soulful sound. That Ted had in there was pretty astounding. Like we couldn't have dreamed it up any better because we were a little lost on like the intended dimensions and then the materials like alder, like the fact that he called those out was awesome. The other reason that this is important, just, you know, other than the fact that it's a unique design, is when it came about, which was the most prolific span of guitar designs in Gibson history. Just so many instruments created in that span. And this was really kind of the first one of the first ones.
So this guitar was drawn in March 57, and not long after this design was drawn, Gibson would introduce the Explorer and the Flying V at NAMM. All while this guitar was lying somewhere in the drawer, nicely tucked away for 65 years. So if you've seen the Explorer, you know that they share the same headstock, right? But turns out that this guitar was actually the first that featured that design.
And even when the Explorer was concepted, they didn't even use that headstock. They used the Futura split V headstock. They just kind of had this in their back pocket, and then when they realized that the split V headstock wasn't the best idea, they were like, oh, let's take this one from this drawing.
So if you think that Ted McCarthy was kind of a genius, well, yes, but he had some ideas that, well, just look at the drawing. There's two places for the pickup selector, over here and over here. And, well...
Through his drawing, have a few questions. Like, one of them was about switch location. Where should I put the switch, left or right side? Turns out either one of those places would be terrible for the player. And Ted wasn't a player, so I wouldn't expect him to know that. But so we chose a placement that was more reminiscent of like a double cut Les Paul special, which is very similar to this model.
So for me, as a guitar player, so influenced by all these iconic models that got released in that era, the Strat, the Tele, Les Paul, the ES's, the Falcon, the SGs, I mean, name an iconic model and it's probably from that era. And it's so interesting to see what else could have been if there were different choices being made. As an ode to their heritage, they built this guitar which took them well over 4 years, and I think this could be a new classic. What do you think? So before I go, I wanted to let you know that the reason I've been a bit slow on content lately is that I'm working on a guitar looping course. It's going to be absolutely fantastic, if I say so myself. I just want to get it all right, and it's taking a lot of time. So I hope you understand, but I can't wait to share that with you. It's going to be awesome. Anyway, now I'd love to hear from you. So what do you think about this model? Should Gibson turn this into a more affordable USA range, or maybe even an Epiphone line? Or, you know, do you see yourself playing this guitar? I'd love to hear that. Now I wish you a lovely day, and...
Yep, Paul Davids and the Gibson, as we said. the tulip model. I like it. I think it looks
Love
very
that,
cool.
man.
Hmm. Goes into a lot of the nuance that goes into a lot of that design and a lot of the choices that were made. And to me, actually, the Explorer,
What
when I looked at that one, the big chunky Explorer body, I think I'd prefer this. So I'm not sure why they would have chosen that over this in the time frame, but
do, do
I'm
you
sure they had
think
good
that
reasons.
rounded? Do you think that rounded design adds to its comfortability?
I would say it
Because
would.
you look the way like a guitar player's playing,
Hmm.
and your arms resting on that sharp curve typically. With that
Depending,
rounded
you're not usually
design,
coming up from the
it's
bottom all the time. Like that rounding is actually specifically along the bottom of the guitar. Like if you were holding it with the headstock straight up, it would be the bottom. And if you were playing it, that would be like off to the side over here. So like when I'm
yeah.
actually
If
playing
you
like
were
the
resting it in your lap,
right, yeah, that bottom kind of curve in the body is rounded more on the spot that's like off my leg to the side, and it's flat more on the part that's on my leg. So it's like it's flat here, and then it works to round it along the back, and then back around. So it just kind of like smooths out the curve around the whole way.
yeah, it looks very comfortable sitting down,
Yeah, I would
and
say so.
just as good. I like the actual design shape. Everything looks like
Mhm.
it's made to just mold into you.
Yeah, I thought it was also interesting that he had the switches placed in those weird spots in the top corners, which neither of those would really be good for a player, like he was saying. So they put it somewhere that it would make sense to actually have it. But it made sense when they're saying he wasn't really a player himself, so he didn't, think about where a guitar player would necessarily want that switch to be. It was more, well, this would where it would make sense on the body, as
Engineering
opposed to
design.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
engineering, as opposed to looking at the actual talking to the actual people who are going to use the product at the end and seeing, well, where would you want the switch? Is it better if it's here? Or is it better if it's there? You mock up a few designs, ask a few different people, and see, you would probably get a bunch of different answers that would all say, oh, yeah, not there and not there, like the two spots that he picked. But, this is one of those things. You got to pick somewhere, and some of it is a style choice, and some of it is, functionality. Got to get the wires there, so you'd have to drill cavities through the body and all that kind of stuff. So that could all affect the sound and the vibrations and all that as well.
Yeah, and
But
it's kind of
I
funny
really like
that like they ended up making the flying V, which is
that.
like completely uncomfortable,
Hmm.
instead of a potentially very comfortable guitar.
Hmm. Yep. And again, some of it could come down to sound. Some of it could come down to who was behind it for an endorsement. Like somebody saw one and saw the other, and like, oh, give me that flying V. It could be a simply, you know, uh, visible style choice. As opposed to listening to it and a comfortability and
Well,
all
those
that kind
V's
of.
do look cool.
Oh yeah,
You can understand why they made something like that because it just looks cool. It's like a lightning bolt.
yeah, absolutely. Very much like a lightning bolt. The one I have isn't even an actual flying V, but it's a Dean, and it has that sort of a similar style body, and I always think it looks like a lightning bolt. It's definitely cool. Now we had another one that was talking about linked in with the 50s there, and this one was about the 50s wiring. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. It's more of a guitar tech type of a thing where the way that they used to wire the pickups or the way they would wire the tone and the volume controls for the pickups back then were a little bit different, where if you use the modern wiring and you go to roll the volume down, whether you have one volume and one tone or two volume and two tone controls on the guitar, when you go to roll down the volume from 10 to 7 to 4, let's say, each of those drops, you lose a lot of treble and a lot of the high end as you roll it down with the modern wiring. So with the 50s wiring, they were trying to get around that issue, and you're able to preserve a lot of that presence and high end. And he gives a good example. It's a short video; it's only a few minutes, but he gives a good example towards the end
Does
where
it
he
provide
plays.
provides more boost to the signal?
It's not even more boost. It's more that when you use the modern wiring and you bring the volume down like that, it brings the volume down, but it also cuts the high end more than you would expect. And it's not like problematic when you hear it. It's like, oh, it's not like it sounds terrible, but when you hear the comparison between the modern wiring and the 50s wiring, you see why they would want to preserve that, because you can actually roll the volume back down and still preserve a lot more of that high end to the signal.
So
But
they
again, that
don't
wouldn't.
wire like they used to.
Right, exactly. But also,
Yeah.
it only really matters if you're rolling the volumes down. Like if you're playing at full volume, then it doesn't matter. Like whichever way, it seems to be the same sound. Like when you're playing at 10 in both situations, it
Well,
sounds the same.
wouldn't you want to at least once in a while? You want the option.
Oh, it's good to have the option.
Do you
Exactly. If you're
do
looking for
you
that
roll?
particular tone.
Do
Me,
you roll your
I
volume
don't
down?
I don't usually play through my amp very much when it comes to guitar. So for me, it's not the best example. Me, I usually just play a clean guitar signal with everything wide open into the software and then do whatever I'm going to do with it. And I don't usually play guitar that much. I'm usually playing bass lines when I'm putting stuff together for tracks. But I do need to start looking at that more. Like, especially today, I went to a rehearsal and I brought my guitar and I brought my amp, and we didn't actually end up playing that much, but I got to start getting together that way. So I need to get more comfortable with my amp. So I need to get somewhere where I'm not in a small apartment where if I turn my amp on 2, I'm already like blowing out the neighbors. So like next time I go to the studio, I'm just going to start bringing my amp with me from now on, so that when I'm going to be playing guitar, I'll have my amp there and be able to dial in my amp to the tone that I want from it. But that is one aspect I've been neglecting in my knowledge.
I kept my amp at the band room. I didn't bother to lug that back and forth.
Yeah, and he's got room for it.
At home, I play with headphones. At practice, I played with the amp.
Right. Now at Joey's place, they have just ridiculous amps. You've seen pictures, I think, where the amps and the cabinets, and he's got thousands of guitars. He's just got everything you could want is already there. So like me bringing my stuff there is kind of silly, but it would be only just for me to get more comfortable with when I'm dialing in my sound. Okay, for this song, I want to do more treble, more this, more that. I haven't really gotten into the nuance of dialing in the amp or dialing in my controls on the guitar so much, where normally, again, everything I just wide open and I play my part and then I'm out. But I do need to look at that a lot more to appreciate the finer things. But when I did get it, I chose an SG standard because I know that I like the name. I know that I have friends who were big. The guitar, the Gibson SG.
Oh, Gibson.
Yeah. The SG standard is what I use there. And then for the amp, I'm using a Blues Junior, Fender Blues Junior. And that's one that, again, it wasn't really extensive research, or, I chose that one for specific reasons. It was more like,
Fender knows blues.
Well, yeah, I was like, I can afford that amp, and
Fender knows.
I don't play guitar
well.
that often, so for me, it was like a good way to get something that I can bring somewhere. If I need to bring a guitar and an amp, I can do that, But it's not anything crazy. But again, with this one, it's about the 50s wiring, and this goes back to when he's dialing it off. You'll see the difference when he plays the 2 different signals. Like he plays the guitar, I guess, before he makes the changes, he plays it through, so you can hear it at 10, and you hear it at 7, and you hear it at 4. Then he makes the changes in the wiring.
Oh, that's important.
Exactly. Yeah. And then he gives you the so you get the same sound, same level of sound, but you can hear the difference in the presence and the high end. But again, this is the 50s wiring for these particular pickups here. And so that one.
Going back in time.
Back in time. And this is from Thoman's Guitars and Basses, is one of the channels that we've looked at before. This is where we saw Julia, I believe, was the one who was doing all those bass lines we did before, like top 5 Cool in the Gang bass lines and all those. Those all came from this
awesome.
The same site. So it's a great resource for multiple reasons. And this is
I speak music.
He speaks
I
music.
speak music too.
Exactly. So let's see what he's got to say.
Basses. In today's Guitar Tech Tips, I will show you the 50s wiring. In this series, I want to show you how to fix the most common issues and how to set up your guitars and basses without using too many special tools. If you roll back the volume on most guitars, you will lose a lot of treble and clarity, not just volume. It's not nice at all. I mean, if you want to darken your tone, you will use the tone knob, right? That's where the 50s wiring comes in, which helps you to avoid losing all the treble when you turn down the volume knob. In case you enjoy Guitar Tech Tips, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell. What is the 50s wiring? Back in the late 50s, Gibson used to wire their guitars this way. It's a small change compared to modern wiring, and it's easily doable on all guitars and basses that have 1 volume and 1 tone, or 2 volumes with 2 tone knobs. It's a little trickier on strats and jazz basses, unfortunately. Basically, a 50s wiring is connecting the tone pot with the volume pot's output lug instead of using the input. This is a modern wiring, so the tone is connected to the volume pot's input lug. On 50s wiring, this connection would be here on the output. Typically, you will use a capacitor to bridge the volume and the tone pots instead of using a wire between them. I'll disconnect the tone from the volume and clean up the lugs. Be careful not to disconnect other wires while soldering. As told, I'll use the center lug of the tone pot for ground, so I connect it to the back side of the pot. The capacitor goes between the left lug and the volume pot's center lug, which is its output. If your guitar has 2 volume and 2 tone knobs, you simply repeat the process. And now it's time for a test flight. I show you the treble loss when you turn down the volume with the guitar's original modern wiring and with the 50s wiring. Let me know in the comments below if you heard any difference. I'd also love to know what you want to see in this series. Don't be afraid of setting up and fixing your guitars yourself. It's time to become your own guitar tech.
I have cavities.
Definitely time to become your own guitar tech. That's definitely good advice. And it's one of those where you could definitely hear the more high end, the more presence in the sound in the after than it was in the modern wiring. And it does beg the question why they would make a change like that if it made such a difference. And I'm sure there are good reasons, but I would have to do some further investigation to see what those would be.
Well, the fact that he knew it and recorded it how it had sounded, made the change, and have a wave, a comparison wave. Was it you who was saying you were gonna record before you changed your strings?
Yep, when I did the string change on the Dean, the next time the Dean is using 10s right now, and I bought the Mammoth 12s to put on it so that I can down tune more easily and get into some other types of, some tunings that are a little bit looser and whatever. With the thicker strings, it should work out better. So I should get some examples. And the main thing though is like the riffs that you saw him just play. Like he had a very specific thing that he was going to play. It's the exact same way if he could both times. So
yeah, well that's how you give it a nice give it a nice calibration test.
Exactly. And I would just need to work out
what you're getting for a signal with one thing.
I just need to work out what would be the best thing to play for that, to get that comparison on the Dean from the 10s to the 12s. Like just playing a couple notes is one thing, playing chords is another thing, but it's more about the style that is intended, like the style that I would be playing with the Dean.
If you're testing a specific instrument like that guitar,
right,
you play your go-to groove. Like, oh, when I have a guitar like this is my go-to groove.
Yep. And that's the whole thing, is like that was one of the things that I talked about my buddy Mike about long ago, was a guitar store, set list, so to speak. Like just something, even if it's just a 5-minute throw together, it's like some songs that we could do pieces of, just walk into a guitar store, grab something off the wall, plug in and go, right? And that's the thing, is a lot of times I would do that. I would get there, I'd be like, yeah, all right, grab something off the wall, plug in, play what? Like, play a G chord, play a C chord, play a D chord. Like, okay, we're done here, and like move on. It's like you got to have something that you want to play, and whether it's a set.
Well,
song
those are my
or a set
go-to
groove,
chords.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is like it's very easy to just play
those are my
three.
go-to chords.
But on the guitar, it's more like blap blap blap. You play those 3 chords, and then what? It's like if you're in that key, sure, you could do solos. You would pick a song that uses those chords and play it through. You could play "Wish You Were Here" or whatever. Uses a bunch of those There's a number of different songs that you could play that all have those chords in them. But the main idea is just to have something that really highlights the instrument or the changes in the instruments. Nice. Always fun. Couple little chords here, couple little chords there, and get some shredding on in between. Now we have a couple other things for tonight. One was our buddy Mike from Creative Sauce. He had one on sending to effects post.
Creative Sauce is awesome.
Yeah, this one's a cakewalk one about sending things pre or post. And it's about 11 minutes, so I figured we'd jump into that.
Yeah, some of the best cakewalk tutorials. Oh, yeah. Everything that I needed to know when I started with cakewalk, got from here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got some great stuff. And we've watched, I'm trying to think about, I know we've seen a number of them that were cakewalk related. I'm trying to think of what other ones we had seen. Most were cakewalk.
Oh, he's got a whole bunch of equipment stuff.
And equipment stuff, right. That's what it was. A bunch of that as well. Great stuff, though. And again, like even if you went for no other reason than I want to say it was like the top 10 cakewalk hidden secrets or 15 more cakewalk hidden secrets. Like there's a few videos of that style of title that just have some great stuff in there. It's not not you're okay here. You just sat down with cakewalk and here's the first 10 things you do. But these are ones you've been working with a cakewalk for a while. But I bet you didn't know about this or that. Like you get these little nuggets.
The hidden secrets. Yeah. The hidden secrets help me to understand scene shotting, like setups. You want to be in one kind of editing mode when you're working with MIDI. You want to be in a totally different one when you're not.
Yeah. And this one is on
scene layouts. That top right corner thing. Yep.
And this one's on pre versus post. So this would be when you're looking at the actual channel strip and you go to add, like you're going to send something to the reverb. You've got the chance to send it pre or post. And he's going to get into the reasons why you would want to do it. Or if you haven't seen a difference and you've clicked it a couple times and you're not sure what exactly it does, he's going to get into the nitty gritty of the pre versus post. You can hear the difference. Oh, yeah. But even if you don't, this would be why you would make these changes.
So here we are in Cakewalk with a very
signal routing.
Yep. Signal routing and going to the buses. Exactly. He's using a reverb bus for this. So it's a perfect example of that. And it's very simplified where he's just got one instrument track coming in, going to a bus, and he kind of goes over the whole differences there.
All set up with this blue channel over here. I have an acoustic guitar track. It could be anything. And over on this green bus over here, I have inserted a reverb effect. Okay, so anything I send to that bus is going to have that reverb applied. Let's do that now. I'll go over to my acoustic guitar channel. I'll click on the plus symbol next to sends and I'll select that bus reverb. Okay. Now, let me know in the comments down below if you've ever done this and you've noticed this button here. It's labeled post and it's currently switched on, and you've switched it off and on and haven't really heard a difference, so therefore haven't used this feature. Hi folks, I'm Mike, and I hope you're well. Mixing is partially about problem solving, and it's amazing how often the solution involves using a bus. But how we send our signal to that bus can make a big difference to the outcome. That's why in today's video, we're going to be learning about post sends, pre-sends, and when to use them. Okay, so back to our original example that we were looking at in the intro. I've got my acoustic guitar channel over here with this send across to this green channel, which has a reverb plugin inserted. So I'm going to hear guitar with some reverb. Before we listen to that, let's just switch that send off so we can hear how that acoustic guitar sounds without the reverb. Okay, now let's switch it on and hear it with the reverb. Okay, right away, we can probably hear that there's way too much reverb for most circumstances. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can control the level of the reverb here. First of all, we could go to the reverb bus itself and just use the fader and turn it down. So you could start off with it all the way at the bottom and then gradually push it up until it sounds right to you. It would sound like this. Now that method is okay if you're just using sort of one instrument like this and it's using one bus for reverb. But if you've got several instruments or channels going to that bus, you may want to control individual levels of reverb for each channel. So what we're going to do is go back to the fader and then just double click on it to reset it. And this time we're actually going to use the level control over here right next to the send. So I'll turn that all the way down, I'll play the track, and then I'll gradually turn it up until I'm happy with the result. Okay, that sounds about right to me. Now, an interesting thing happens when we use the fader for this guitar. Let's imagine it was fading out at the end of a track, or perhaps just, you know, dipping down lower during the middle of a track. Have a listen and see what we hear. So we hear the guitar fade out, but we also hear the reverb fade out in unison. Yeah, they kind of keep their balance with each other, and it all sort of disappears naturally there. And that's because we have this button switched on, this post button that we were talking about. Now, what I want you to remember is that the word post also means after. So when we say post fader, which is what this is labeling, we're actually meaning after fader, meaning the signal which is being sent to the bus is being affected by the level of the fader. Okay, so less fader, less signal being sent to the bus. So in this case, less reverb. That's quite handy, because then when we want to sort of adjust the volume of our guitar in this case, we're also automatically adjusting the volume of the reverb as well. So that's the function at the moment of this post button being switched on, and it's switched on by default because that's the most common usage. However, we don't always want it to behave in that way.
You don't always want it to go that way, but that's one of those that you would sometimes check out and sometimes you'd not. So it's really one that you have to go by, you know, at the moment, what's your intention at the time. But I really do like the fact that it changes the, or, you know, the difference between it being post or pre means that the level will stay consistent no matter if you bring the volume down or not. I think that's a pretty
And
cool
it'll affect how
there.
you mix. It'll affect your strategy, because you'll see that all over my mixes. You do it by the levels of the signal, and then adjust at the slider level till the instrument and the effects sound where they're supposed to. Bus mixing, this is why bus mixing is so awesome, because you have complete control over the effect and your individual instrument levels, and they're separate.
And I do love the way that he simplifies it down to a very simplified case of, you know, here's just an acoustic guitar, here's a reverb, here's how you do the bus. But, you know, at the same time, talking about the concept, saying if you were sending 10 instruments, you know, it's how much you send each of those 10 instruments would make that change. And again, getting into the pre and the post. But there's still more to it. It's just I wanted to jump in there and go over that real quick. And let's see where we go next.
We're using our send for a different reason, and you'll see over here with the acoustic guitar, we're now sending our signal to a different bus. It's called compressor. That's all the way over here. It's the purple one, and this bus has a compressor on it, the FET76. Now I'm going to be doing something which is called parallel compression. That's simply where you have your original guitar signal and then you do a send to a bus with a compressor on it, and you have that signal highly compressed, okay, very, very highly compressed, and then you just blend the two together, okay. And that's why you'll notice with this mix at the moment, I actually have the fader for the compressor bus down pretty low here, okay, because normally with parallel compression, you're going to want that highly compressed guitar just to be quite a lot lower than the regular signal for the guitar or whatever instrument it is you're parallel compressing. Now, currently, I have that post button switched on as it was before. Now I want you to watch the needle over here on this compressor as I push the fader down, okay? Now with more compression, that needle is going to be going all the way over to the left, okay? You'll see that as soon as I play the guitar, it will go all the way over to the left. Then see what happens as I turn that fader down. Okay, so it's highly compressing. Going down, look at that needle. as we get all the way down to the bottom, we can see there is no compression happening at all. Why? Because we have this set to post fader, then less and less signal is being sent to that compressor, okay? So it's not needing to work because it isn't getting the signal that it needs to really kick in. Now, in most cases with something like parallel compression, that is not ideal at all. We actually want to still have that highly compressed guitar, but we just want its volume to go down lower, okay? So, of course, as you've probably guessed, we need to flick this switch. We need to turn the post fader send off, okay? So we'll switch it off. Now we have what's called a pre-fader send, okay? Now, pre means before, yeah? So the signal is being sent across to this compressor before it's being affected by the fader at all, okay? So as you're probably going to guess, is as I bring this fader down now, that needle is not really going to change over here. It's still going to highly compress that guitar, okay? So let's do that and see how it actually sounds. Fader's going down, still lots of compression. Okay, now that fader is all the way down, but you'll notice we're still hearing the guitar. Why?
Very cool,
because
right?
we're actually now hearing only the compressed guitar over here. Now, this can be a little bit problematic, of course. We are having the effect that we wanted in the sense that we're getting that guitar to be compressed regardless of its volume, as its output volume. But we usually want those two now to work in unison. So we solve that in the following way, although at least I solve it in the following way. I'm just going to reset that fader for the guitar. And
Parallel compression because you're getting the pure signal through, the dry signal's coming through, and you're also getting the wet signal in parallel rather than doing full compression on the full signal from the start to finish. You're actually running it through a separate chain. So you are getting full signal and the compressed signal, and you can blend them to your will at the end here.
And because compression gets confused by the levels it's trying to compress, as you bring down that level,
if you're sending
compression doesn't do anything unless you turn off the post.
Right.
Totally understand.
Yep, and turning off. And also, it was a great example in terms of the reverb versus the compression, because on the reverb, you probably would want it to be in the post configuration where it is just all going down together. Whereas
your typical effects,
different example.
Your typical effects, you would want the post. But for something like compression, it gets affected by bringing that slider down.
Exactly.
It stops doing its job.
Yep,
it's
doesn't
like
do its job as effectively, and especially with
a gate,
the fact that he
filter,
had that.
Anything like that is probably better to turn off post.
And the way that he had the compressed signal at a pretty low volume, like with a 10 or 20% there, as he brought the main fader for the other part on the left here, as he brought that down past 20%, now all of a sudden you can go all the way to 0 and you still hear the guitar because all you're hearing now is the compressed guitar. And I thought that was very cool to bring it right down through that 20% down to 0, and you can really hear the difference between the compressed guitar and the uncompressed guitar and how it kept that consistent level of compression on the way down.
And that's the beauty of bussing. Like bussing allows you to keep the effect going even when the signal's
faded. You can independently work on them. And if it is too much effect, you can just bring the fader for the effect down without having to actually go back and tweak 20 different channels of something. You can just bring the overall effect down. If
it does. When you start taking that effects routing approach, putting effects on each individual track becomes a lot of work, especially for your computer.
Yeah. And especially because it's a lot of the same effects that you'll be using from one to the other, and using different ones can be a problem. Like like to talk about convoluting reverbs, where if you get multiple reverbs that are not set the same way, they can really slap at each other. They bounce off each other. Yeah,
they fight each other.
You're way better off going with the bus route where you have just the reverb, and here's what I send to it. And if you do need a second reverb for something different, you got to make sure they don't fight. But like for a snare, for example, if you wanted a different reverb on the snare than you did for the vocals, that's a different thing. But in general, you'd want to keep all the instruments in the same room, the same theoretical room, so that they sound like they have the same amount of reverbs on them.
Yeah, if you're bussing a whole mix like that, 4 to 6 buses usually cover. I usually will make at least 3 to 4 for instruments. Once there's vocals in there, probably 7 to 8 in my bus that are tracks using those effects.
Yeah. Awesome.
Like the ones you see here. He set up a reverb and compressor. Like those are the first two you make.
Yep. You can get those happening. For me, the compressor, I like to use the compressor for the bass, not all the time, but every once in a while, just if I have some notes that hit kind of quiet, that'll bring them out. And if anything did kind of get in too hard, like if I was slapping a little bit, that can come out as a little bit too high. So a little bit of compression can help on that, but I try to avoid it if I don't need it.
A good compressor will find the needles in the sound haystack.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And that's where if it is a more nuanced part where there's a lot more, quiet stuff, or if I'm doing faster runs where some of the notes are a little bit more muted, it'll really pull them out by having the compression up a little bit. All right, let's see how he decides to wrap this one up here.
And we're going to create a new bus. Okay, so I'll just drag this divider over. I'm just going to insert a stereo bus here. Doesn't matter what we call it. We can just call it G bus for guitar bus. That's fine. Now at the bottom of the guitar channel, okay, where we have our output drop down, it's currently set to master, which means the guitar is just going straight out to the master fader or the master bus. Okay, so I'm going to change that and redirect it to G bus, which is that new bus we created. Also, for the compressor over here, the guitar compressor in purple, I'm going to do the same. Go to its output and have it go to G bus. Now what's happening is those two blended signals, which are kind of got a balance with each other at the moment, the original guitar and the compressed guitar, are now both going to this new fader. Now when I bring this fader down,
that gives you universal control.
Then we get the expected result.
Exactly.
We're still getting the original guitar. We're still getting a highly compressed guitar blended in with it. But now when we use our fader for automation or what have you, we get what we would kind of expect to happen. They both blend out together. So when should you use post-fader sends and when should you use pre-fader sends? Well, certain effects are going to have their character change depending on the amount of level or signal they receive. Okay, the example we used earlier was a compressor. Okay, so it's going to actually kick in with more signal being sent to it. Another example of that would be saturation plugins. Normally they're going to need to reach a certain level before they actually start to add saturation. Fall below a certain level and they're really not doing much. So in those cases, I would always use a pre-fader send so that I can maintain a consistent level going through to those buses with those effects on. In most other cases, when I'm using stuff like reverb or delay or EQ, then a post-fader send is just fine. It's simple to use. There's no fussing around with extra buses, and it's going to do the trick for you. Now, buses are not the only type of channel that you can send signals to in Cakewalk. If you want to find out about all of your options in terms of routing in Cakewalk by BandLab, check out this video here. We're going to run through all of that, and that's going to help you find better solutions for the problems that you face in your mixes.
He's got great information.
Oh, and I've seen that one too.
Exactly.
That send video is just as good as the busing one. All my techniques with mixing these days are what he pushes there.
Exactly.
And that's where I started to learn it. For Cakewalk, he's got the best explanation for digital routing and understanding it with your DAW. You can send signals anywhere in the chain, at the top for the effects processing, or all the way at the bottom when it's going out to the master, so you can upload to BandLab.
Yep. And again, my suggestion would be for any of these kinds of things, if you haven't done much of it before, is to get into it in a most simplified cases you can. Like try just, a guitar and a drum or whatever, like just 2-track thing to start with, and just start playing with it and start messing with the effects and the combinations of effects and the way to send to the buses and how to work with the buses. And just by doing simple examples like that, instead of just diving into a 60-track project and being like, okay,
well, focus on 1 or 2 tracks.
Right.
And once you do it and you understand it, it's just duplicate,
Mhm.
lather, rinse, repeat.
Yep, reiterate. Yep, absolutely. Now we've been not giving too much love to the drummers lately, so I did find one for the drummer stuff, and this is 7 levels of a drum beat every drummer should know. So I figured we'd go a little bit of drums for today here. This is
Bust out the sticks.
Bust Out the Sticks. This is a quick little 4-minute one here. This was Stephen Taylor's channel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but let's see. I think I've done one or more of his videos before, but if not, they're ones that I've watched before and I've incorporated into my drumming. But just some fantastic stuff in here, and we'll see how he's got these 7 levels of a drum beat every drummer should know.
In the life of a drum beat is the idea phase. So it's when you think of it, or you hear it, or maybe you heard another song that inspired it, or you just heard some sounds in life that inspired it. You woke up one morning, you stumbled upon it, however that may be. But it's like you have the idea and it's kind of floating in your head. You just kind of need to start solidifying it. The second phase would be working it out. So you're trying to get the basic idea on paper, under your hands, under your feet. You're just trying to actually get the physical coordination of it together now that you've solidified the idea. The third phase is my personal favorite. That's experimentation. So anything goes in this phase. We're gonna be trying it on every sound source in different styles and different feels at different tempos with different ostinatos in each hand. We're gonna be throwing the accents around. There's no rules in this phase. It's just what sounds the best, and you're just trying to get as many ideas so that whenever you have a writing session or you want to use this in music, you have the ability to pull from those ideas. The fourth phase is polishing. You want to take the idea that you've had and that you've worked on and experimented with and worked out, and then you want to take it and polish it and make it into somewhat of a finalized concept. The fifth phase is the final concept, and this won't always be its final form, but it's as far as you can go without putting it in a musical setting. The sixth phase is the musical editing phase. So once the beat is solidified, but it meets the music, there are often things that need to be adjusted, added to, most oftentimes taken away from, or different voices need to be emphasized to fit with the song that you're putting it to. The seventh phase is the flow state. This is where you're going to be able to go in and out of that beat within a song and start to express yourself around it. So not just play the actual notes that you thought of and wrote down, but also put that with other things that you know to create within music so that the song can shine.
Very cool. And again, that is, way beyond the level that I can do on drums, but that is one of
Oh
those
my
things
God.
that I am aspiring towards.
Yeah, he's insane drummer.
Absolutely. Steven Taylor.
I love how he built the song into the tutorial.
Exactly. And kind of faded it up with the.
Yeah, and just kind of like, that wasn't just good advice for drummers. That was song advice.
Exactly. That was my key point, was that it relates across instruments. It's not a purely drum thing. Like that's a great example on the drums, but it does relate to any instrument and anything, just any general approach. That third phase, the experimental phase, highly important. I do that all the time with bass lines. You know, you get something, you start getting locked into the structure. You say, okay, here's the roots. I understand the structure of the song now. Experiment time. Now it's okay. A couple of these, a couple of those, a couple of those, and then at the end, like if you listen to it all the way through, it wouldn't sound cohesive at all. Because when I'm doing that layer, that third section, I'm more trying this, trying that. I'm throwing everything at it. And then when I listen back, I pick, and I'm like, okay, I like that third thing I did. Okay, I don't like that fourth thing. I like that seventh thing I did. You know, like pick out the little pieces.
Exactly, Glenn. What all my pieces, where did they fit? Now I'm trying to make the musical puzzle of the last like 40 years.
And that's the thing, is as you're playing one thing, you might be like, ooh, there was that one part in that other song that didn't really fit there that would be perfect here. And that's the kind of connection that's tough to make. But if you can remember it and you can find it, it's like, oh, that, yeah, and you put that here, and then that's the Lego block you were looking for to get from here to that next section or what have you.
Yeah, and all 7 of those phases, I go through that for each part. Like, where does this part fit?
Got to make them all fit. You know, everything's got to get in there. Now we have, let's see here. I had 2 more that I wanted to go over tonight, and one of them was, let's see, Tim Pierce. Yeah, Tim Pierce, and he was going over the real truth about playing guitar on a top 10 song. Like he's played, we've gone over the fact that he's played like on a bunch of really actually big deal songs over time. He's a session player. He's played on I can't even tell you how many songs, but this is one of those where just kind of getting behind the scenes a little bit on how it went when he did this. And let me get him when he starts out. And it's the truth. And he always likes to start in just by kicking right into it. So he's going to start playing right off, and always got a smile on his face. I love that. So let's see.
Yeah, Tim's awesome.
It's hard to believe that Mint Mobile can be good at just $15 a month. So, as Mint's new owner, I brought in one of our first and oldest customers.
Wow, that was fun. So a number of years ago, guys, I did a record with Jason Mraz, and it was one of my favorite records I've ever done. I like to do these historical kind of videos on songs that I've done from time to time. And there was a top 10 hit on this particular record. It wasn't this song. This is my favorite song on the record. It's called Freedom Song. But the hit that he had was a very stripped down acoustic thing called I Won't Give Up. And it went to number 8 in 2012. Jason had one other hit song in the top 10 in 2009, and that's called I'm Yours. So this was his second one. And I just want to play you a little of it. I made a clip of kind of the part I played on it. See if you remember this song. it was the top 10 song for him. And the thing about it is it was a crowded field of very, very intense pop songs. And then there was this really, really quiet, organic, kind of sensitive song that we did that was part of that top 10. So just take a look at this clip and see if you remember this song.
I won't give up on us, even if the skies get rough. I'm giving you all my love. I'm still looking up, still looking up, but I won't give up on us. God knows I'm
So Jason is an amazing artist, and when he brings a song into the studio with a group of musicians, it's already done. You know what I'm saying? He's singing it, it's playing it, it sounds great, and what you try and do is just embellish it a little bit and not try and get in the song's way at all. So in this particular case, I played some 12-string. Now, my part on the record was simpler than that. When I kind of do reenactments, I try and add a few, flashy things. So it was simpler than that, but the real contribution I made on this song was in the bridge. And so look at this clip, and this is the actual part I played in the bridge, and it's a counterpoint part that kind of, just steps out a little bit. So that was my largest kind of moment in the song. Take a look at this clip.
Into the bridge, major 7th, flat pick. Now stabs.
Someone who walks away so easily. I'm here to stay and make the difference that I can make.
Now I created a counterpoint.
Our differences, they do a lot to teach us how to use the tools and gifts we got here. We got a lot at stake.
Again.
And in the end,
D,
still my friend,
D2.
we did intend for us to work. We didn't break, we didn't burn. We had to learn.
That's just a B7 with a 3rd in the bass.
Caving in, I had to learn what I got and what I'm not, and who I am. I won't give up.
Okay, so now let's move on to Freedom Song, which is this really, really fun up-tempo thing. And I knew when we cut it, it was kind of my favorite song on the record. And then they added these great horns and great backgrounds. So it's a really fun song to do. Before we start, I just want to remind you guys there is a special offer in the masterclass. Just for this weekend, and it's right below this video. And if you want to support the channel and support us, take a look at the masterclass if you're interested in learning guitar. It's gotten really big, and I keep adding to it. And I'm about to publish a beginners section, a big one. Well, we're up to about 70 videos. That'll happen in the next couple of weeks. But check it out. There's a 14-day free trial. If you want to, if you want lessons, you can always opt out if it's not right for you. So anyway, let's move on to Freedom Song. I'm going to play through it one more time just for a second, and then let's talk about it. This is, this is my favorite kind of music, and it's so fun to play rhythm. It's really fun to play lead on a song like this. Even more fun to play rhythm. Anyway, here we go. So it's super fun. It goes from F sharp minor to C sharp minor to B minor and back. Pretty simple. I find when I solo on this song, I really need to pay attention to chord tones. Let me show you.
Para todo en la casa usamos el internet. Streaming, gaming, videollamadas.
Verizon Files te da upload speeds tan rápidos como downloads y planes desde $39.99.
Okay, over to C sharp minor. Now to B minor. Back to C sharp. Back to F sharp. landing on a C sharp. So I'm really landing on chord tones every time. And then when it comes to the rhythm, there's a lot of muting going on.
I see birds fly across the sky. Everyone's heart flies together.
That is constant, and it really makes it fun, and it kind of keeps you locked in when you're playing rhythm. So back to lead, landing on a C sharp. Now to B minor. And that's a chord tone. You know, it's a C sharp. And the thing about this, as long as you're not landing, you can just play the blues. But the minute you stop, you know, this whatever long blues phrase that you do, you have to kind of land on a chord tone. So that's kind of how I manage this whole thing. So hey everybody, I'm just looking at some of the questions right now. Do you have to ask the artists to teach the parts you wrote? Whose property is it? So here's how it works. An artist writes a song, and what is the song is the music and the lyrics and the melody. So when you play parts on that song, you're just asked to be basically an orchestrator and an arranger, and you're compensated for that in a good way. And there are royalties sometimes attached to that through the Musicians Union. So a writer and an artist, they own their song. Now, there have been cases in history where a riff has gotten where a song has gotten so popular because of the actual riff that a musician has gone back and said, hey, I have a lawyer and it's obvious that this riff actually made this song a hit and you need to give me a little piece of this. So in history, that has happened. But in general, what you do as a musician is you orchestrate. And speaking of orchestration, my friend Carl Ridden is here. Carl is a professional orchestrator and a great guitar player too. So you are generous in your orchestrations, and these parts are simply orchestrations, and that's how it works. Oh, Guillermo, thanks for signing up for the masterclass. Yeah, see what you think. Poke around for 2 weeks. If you like it, stay. If you don't, then you can opt out. Suzanne, thanks for the thumbs up about the masterclass. I'm glad you're liking it. I really am. Oh, Al, that's a great question. How does having the cabinet at Jet Engine Loud become a benefit? Amps are best at their sweet spot, and that's usually too loud to have in the room with you. I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but and you know, that's why I'm actually this year I'm going to investigate a lot of attenuators, because I think you really need to have a good attenuator with any amp if you're not miking like I am in a separate room or separate location. So Jet Engine Loud means I can turn that Marshall up to where it sounds the best, and that's a sound that's so loud I can't have it in the room with me. So that's the benefit. The amp sounds best at 6, and 6 is way too loud for anybody. I mean, you would go deaf listening. So anyway.
That's only 6. Imagine.
I'm going to play one more time, and then we'll take some more questions. Really appreciate you guys joining us.
That's like the intonation on the amp side.
I haven't looked into it too much, actually. I would have to follow him up on that and see what he's going with.
The same way you guys modify the intonation the way you do, and for those reasons, with those cabinets and what he was saying, finding the sweet spot and you know, the attenuation.
Yeah.
That's
I'm thinking sound dampening. Like, if you're sitting in like a room that is essentially a box, you know, you have to have some deflecting materials and some absorbing materials on the walls and things like that. You want to attenuate the sound. You want to make sure
you want to shape it.
Yeah.
Just like
you don't
light.
want it to overpower, though.
When you're lighting something, you don't typically blast the light at what you're trying to do, especially like for human lighting and models. You put soft lights or you bounce light off of something. Sounds the exact same challenge.
Yep, trying to make a show out of it. It's just funny that he's talking at the Marshall at 6 is like unlistenable. Like you can't be in the same room. But that's why he actually has the cabinets off in the other room, and they're all mic'd in the other room. But again, you know, the sound at 6, like you could have that room, you know, put it in a closet or what have you, and have it massively, you know, sound dampened, so that the amp on 6 in that closet is fine, and like you don't hear it out here. But there's a mic in there picking it up at its sweet spot volume, and that's what you're recording. So that's what he's talking about, getting that that full sound. And that's where the amp sims are trying to, simulate that sort of a thing. So you don't have to go to, ear bleedingly loud in order to get the amps to perform.
Oh yeah,
the way that you want
all
them
the good sims actually let you move a virtual mic just to virtually simulate moving it.
Yep. I think he's got about 2 minutes left on this one.
Yeah. Activate Pro Tools again. Here we go. Yeah.
I see birds fly across the sky. Everyone's heart flies together. If food is right and people smiling, like there is no other way to feel good.
I love that. He just plays such tasteful parts. It's awesome. Not sure.
Oh
if,
yeah, and he did.
Mhm.
He did make some really good points when it comes to being a studio musician.
Yeah.
In a gig like that, a job like that.
Yep.
The first thing he said, "What am I going to add to this as a paid musician? Don't get in the song's way."
Right. It's not all
number
about you.
one.
It's not all about you. This isn't the song that was made to support you. This is you trying to add to the song to support whatever, either the song or some other particular element.
Yeah, and studios or record companies will throw your ass out if you get in the way of a song. You got to know your place and what you're going to add to it.
Absolutely. It's important. And that's the thing is it's so easy to overplay or to overstep your bounds on a part like that. And actually even he mentions that there were times where he didn't get a gig because of some of the way he played or something that he had said or what have you, just different things that could all kind of fit into that whole picture. But the way he plays is just fantastic. I mean, I love his ads there.
After he said don't get in the song's way, he said, "Oh, fun rhythm parts. Oh, opportunity for lead. Know where you should be sweetening those parts you can add to."
And that's where you're trying to feel those, whether it's hesitation in the song or spots where there should be something filling in where it's not quite there yet, whether there's a vocal part that needs support under it. There's just so many different reasons why you would want to add something particular in a certain spot. And he
did a good job for his choices. I love that song. I remember it.
Exactly.
He gave it a Santana feel when it needed one. He gave it the kind of just groove it needed for simple rhythm.
Yep.
When he said that, like, rhythm is fun to play. It's the ideal part to write.
And I love that about him. It's also it's very humble of him also in terms of so many people, they get to a level of playing and they, whether they see themselves as amazing or the best or whatever, like they get to a level of lead playing and they just go, down this road. I guess maybe sometimes it's that so many people are telling them they're greatest that they just start believing it or whatever. But in his case, he just seems
everybody
to be so
wants
down to earth
solo.
about it. He just seems so down to
everybody
earth.
Wants
He's
to
adding,
just solo.
He's adding to parts to things. He's adding to these amazing songs, and it's not, again, you're not credited on the record as, hey, this is, you know, his record, this and that. It's, but, you know, it's his parts that are on there, so he's credited for the record, and he can always, you know, point to that and say, you know, I did that, you know. But at the same time, he's just sitting back. He's not up in everybody's face about it. He's just, oh yeah, you know, I did that, and it was cool. I did it like this, and you know, he can show you what he did to get it done. I think that's very cool and very just awesome the way that he goes about his style of recording. And again, if I could play like that for, you know, just ripping like 10 minutes straight on a guitar, just ripping solo lines like that, I'd probably never leave the house. Yeah, I'd probably never leave the house because, I mean, at this point, I can do some things here and there. And when I get into a groove like that, I could lose hours where, like, I just started off on some tangent and played for, you know, 3 hours. Next thing I know, I was like, oh, I should have been somewhere half an hour ago. You know, it's like I got to not get tied up in it like that. But at the same time, it's easy to get swept away and that kind of thing.
Yeah, making music is like playing games. You know, video games and music, you can get sucked up for 12 hours.
Oh, easily. Yeah, 12 hours without even blinking. Just like that.
I used to spend the weekends at the band room. Like from Friday afternoon till Monday afternoon, I was at the band room.
Mm-hmm. Making things happen. And that's the thing is for me.
And usually during the week too.
Back when I was in school, like high school, for example, I was, I never considered myself that musical back then. I had taken piano lessons for years, but hadn't really gotten into the guitar. Like I had cousins and uncles who were guitar players who were inspiring me. But at the same time, I didn't have like a daily, you know, playing guitar or had somebody in my daily life who was playing guitar all the time. So I didn't really focus on guitar at that time. And in high school, I was more interested in the video games really than the music. And it wasn't until years later that I got my guitar, my first guitar in my 20s, and then just kind of, you know, again, messed around with it a little bit, but never really got serious-ish about music until about that 10, 15 years ago when I started playing with these
Even
bands.
when I was doing the video games, I was still loving the music in the video games.
Absolutely.
Because nowadays, if you want to make a living making music as a creative artist, video game music is your better than Hollywood opportunity for the serious working musician.
Not only
they're paying a lot more.
Yeah, well, they're paying more, but also if you looked at the number of new games that come out every year,
and the
it's
killer
truly mind-boggling.
soundtracks.
It's like 50,000
The killer
games a year or more. I mean,
soundtracks.
it's ridiculous. So many opportunities.
They're spending more on music budgets for a game than they are in Hollywood.
Yeah. And games, we've talked about how the graphics have come along so far where like the virtual actors at this point, you know, you could motion capture a person's face and they're moving around and you can represent them as an avatar in a game very easily. And that's one of those things that's going to continue to get better as time goes on. I'm very excited to see where that all goes.
You know, 3D cameras, and they're so cheap now. Like cameras that are just seeing the whole room or in a 3D way really are the game changers.
Yeah. The one I was looking at was light field cameras. This was a while ago, but it was basically capturing the entire light field in the room. And it's more like what's going on with the RTX cards where it's, you know, capturing all, you know, it knows there's a light source there and there.
Did you ever have that Xbox camera? Xbox has that 3D.
I remember it, but yeah.
You know, when they were doing the motion recognition?
Yep.
Did you ever see Paranormal Activity, any of those movies? Because there was one.
I want to say so, yeah.
Like the second or the third, they did Paranormal Activity recording with that kind of measurement, and that is something that I bet you could see, like that kind of activity with those kinds of cameras because of the way they work.
Yeah.
And it's not just reading energy; it's actually reading distance of something floating by.
Whether it's LiDAR,
it's got a better chance of getting a picture.
Makes sense. We have another one here from, let's see. I think this one is Rotem Sivan. I think we did
every once in a while.
Last week.
Those Ange pictures, those pictures that look like Ange. Every once in a while, every time it pops up, I'm like, oh my God, Ange jumped in.
Yeah, it's like, what is it?
I love it.
Yep,
but
we have a couple of those images there.
She's all Roloed.
Exactly. And those images were all made by the AI. We went over that a few weeks back. We have that in one of our previous episodes where we went to the AI that generates all the artwork and whether you can feed it a starting image like I did with Ange or just say from scratch and just give it a concept and have it make an image on its own. Definitely some good options there. but this one was Rotem Sivan. And it's take your chords to the next level.
The hands?
Actually, nope. That was a guitar guy. That was Oliver Prehn, and we've looked at some of his things before. From that was all about the piano stuff with the different modes and using those hand grips. He was big on the 3-finger hand grips to move up and down the keyboard. With this, it's a guitar thing. Let's see where he goes.
What's up, guys? When I started playing guitar, I learned all these simple chords here in this neck of the woods, and it's awesome. But what I didn't really understand is how to go from these chords to some more interesting and cool things that I was really excited about. You know, whether it was just like cool parts by Red Hot Chili Peppers or the classics. The thing is, there's a lot of motion and a lot of, you know, melody in these kind of parts, and I was very confused of how can I do that? And what I want to talk about right now is just taking a simple progression and actually doing it together and explaining exactly kind of the thought process. So I'm gonna grab 3 chords: C, G, and A minor. So the first thing that I'll ask myself is like, what key am I situated in? The answer here is C. That's how I'm hearing it. So 1, 5, and 6. That's how I'm hearing it. And maybe it's a nice thing to kind of sing it for a second. So let's just sing the bass. Do, so, la. The idea is that we are connecting our ears and hearing what's happening. Okay, so we're playing it. It's not that exciting yet. I'm gonna drop some things. Leaving some space, maybe allowing you to feel something. Again, before I was playing the strumming, right, the kind of like campfire vibe, soft campfire, but this just doesn't allow a lot of dynamics. Just when I'm not playing all the notes, all of a sudden there's some space to add something. Now you can ask yourself, or me, how did I know to add this melody or this little thing? Well, so I know I'm in C, right? This is the first thing we talked about. So by knowing I'm in C, I can use the framework of C major. C major, or maybe C major pentatonic, which is also A minor pentatonic. All these classic blocks that we know are gonna be useful, but it's not enough. I'm gonna wanna change this a little bit more. So I'm gonna play C major 7 to A minor 7. Check this out. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just changing 2 chords. I'm playing C major 7, G, A minor 7. Cool, we're starting to get somewhere. But honestly, I don't really like the G. This doesn't sit that well with me right now. So I'm gonna use a different chord. What am I gonna use?
There's just one thing you need to make 2022 your best year of guitar yet. It's not more guitar lessons, it's not some
E. That's why I played that open E. I was already hearing that E. So C major 7, E, A minor. Now, why am I playing that? Because I'm kind of asking, where am I leading to? And the reason is, that's how we can change things up. So C major 7, E or E7, secondary dominant of A minor. So I'm just kind of thinking about the direction where I want to go. And that's really helpful, because instead of C, G, A minor, know I'm leading to the A minor, I'm using C, E or E7, gonna use an inversion. I love that sound. So C major 7, E over G sharp to A minor. Maybe a little bend on the pentatonic. Check this out. From here, we got there. Okay, that's cool. But maybe some more things can happen. I'm gonna add another inversion on the A minor. So I'm just creating a little bit more motion. Check this out. A minor, B diminished, A minor first inversion. So it's not a lot is happening, it's just A minor with a little thing. And we can go back and forth between these sounds. So C, E7, A minor. Again, C, G, A minor. Cool, but ours is cooler. I can also do the G to the G sharp to the A. So C, G. Let's do this. I'm gonna try and solo just a little bit with the framework of A minor pentatonic.
It's kind of like Simple Man goes into more than words.
Yeah, it is.
Now I can be general and just play A minor pentatonic like I'm just doing right now. It's gonna work, but I could be more specific. So what I just did was accenting the G to the G sharp of the E to the A, right? So basically we have that note G sharp when we hit the E or E7 that leads us to the A minor. So it's all about understanding where we're going. If you need tabs for all this is all on the Patreon. Thanks again for supporting. It means a lot. If this video helped you just a little bit, please gently hit the like button and maybe even subscribe to not miss more random ideas that
What did he say the
help us
chords
all
were?
grow.
He was starting with C and E, or sorry, he started with C and G and then he went to the C, no, A minor, sorry, A minor. Then he went to the C, E, A minor, but the E he was doing an E7, so he would be using the major third minor 7.
So overall he was in C? As
Overall
far
it
as
was
the
in C.
scale?
Yeah, exactly. Because it was the C, the A minor, the G, and the, yeah, those 3. And the E that he was using later on.
Okay.
And the E being built off the, since that's the third of the C chord, it's basically building that chord off of the third. So it's also a good, strong tone for that C sound. Very cool.
And he totally went through feeling out the groove, you know, the process of
exactly starting very simple, starting with just here's 3 chords that all of you can just sit down and bang out very easily, and then here's a way to
where
spice
to
them up
accent
step by step. Yeah,
yeah, the spice. This is a word musicians now use.
Absolutely, spicy.
I've noticed that. Yeah, I've noticed.
Some of them even they have videos. Find the spicy notes in blah 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 in whichever mode or style.
Well, it is a modern digital term, like airy, spice. these are real terms. Not sure how to explain them, but they are something you use in musical terms to say a lot of things real quick. This is how we spice up this track.
Absolutely. And sometimes you're trying to spice it up. Sometimes it's already plenty spicy, and oh, that's a little too spicy.
Well, depending on who you're talking
down.
to, if I'm talking to a guitarist and he uses that term, I know what he means to spice it up versus, you know, a vocalist, totally different knowledge.
And a drummer, same thing, totally different again, but same concept, totally different
Oh,
execution.
Drummers are fun. They're like animal.
I mean, some of that stuff that Steven was doing in that video earlier. I mean, that was a crazy beat he had going on there. Like when he started it out, it was not too complicated, but even when he was just getting started, it was already looking like, okay, that's already a little beyond my abilities. And then he just kept going and going and going, like even further down that road.
Well,
wow.
By the end, he had such a complex tribal rhythm going on. It's like I could hear multiple tribes all together doing a little off time syncope. It was beautiful how he evolved it by the end.
Yeah, exactly. And having it fit in and having it, polish it by the time you get there. And again, my favorite was still the experimentation phase where you're just trying all different things and seeing, kind of throwing it all at it and seeing what sticks or what you like from all the things that happened there. And that's where, picking and choosing, and that's where the orchestration comes in, saying, okay, I liked that part, I'm going to put that over here. And I like that part, I want that to be further down the line, but I want to put some other stuff in the middle here that's maybe a little like this, maybe a little like that. Pulling a couple
he's seen
things.
it. He looked at it both from the piece level and the completed arrangement. And no matter what he was doing at any given time, chances are, like, we probably all do, can hear all the parts when we're in the middle of writing it. That's sometimes I want to separate that, and I just want to focus in on the part I'm trying to write, but I don't always know how to turn that off. Like I hear the final arrangement and now I have to get there.
Yep. And I was saying that when I do add, bass to things, for example, like sometimes it is a very nugget of a song idea where there's only one part down and it's going to be a 7 or 8 or 10 part piece when it's done, but we only have one part now. So I have to envision what else might be joining into this piece and, put enough bass in to not be empty when it gets that full with instruments, but also put enough in that it's,
and it only takes a nugget.
Yeah.
It only takes a nugget that now I got to stay up for 12 hours.
Yep, exactly. That little nugget of a song idea just gets you going and gets the whole thing happening.
Or doesn't put you to sleep.
One other guy I wanted to talk about, actually, I don't remember. I think we did one of his recently. I want to say that he was more of a recent find, Jeff Williams. And in this case, I was looking at what he had for different jam tracks, essentially, where a lot of them were, some were Eric Clapton, but the ones that really jumped out at me when I was looking was Grateful Dead lessons, where there were some Grateful Dead bass lessons, a bunch of different ones for Grateful Dead and Fish for figuring out the structure for jams and being able to.
But these guys will teach you how to groove.
Exactly.
I mean, you as a Deadhead and Fish fan, that's why you're the groove master.
Well, thank you.
In our group, you got the groove.
And there's definitely a whole bunch of different ones where there's some really good grooves in there. And for this, I was actually working on guitar stuff because like some of these, the Grateful Dead songs like Sugary and Deal, there's at least 4 or 5 others that I was looking at that day that were just they're in here. They have great jam tracks in here. And with each jam track, I like the approach that he uses where it's excellent instrumentation, excellent recording quality of what he did. And he took, the lead parts out so that you can add the lead parts in. That's what, it's a jam track. It's the purpose. But at the same time, for the Grateful Dead ones,
challenges, huh?
He also split where on the stuff he's showing you the Jerry Garcia parts and the Bob parts. And that's the part that I was really focused on because to me, being able to split those apart is hugely helpful because listening to the Grateful Dead, there's 2 guitars going on and you can hear.
But you don't know who's who.
You don't always know who's who. After a while, you start to develop an ear. You go, okay, I know that's Bob and I know that that's Jerry. But at the same time, you don't necessarily know how to split them apart.
And it's the same with the drummers.
Yeah.
Like the drummers, unless you're actually watching like a good video, it's hard to tell which one's
it's just one big
doing that part.
Exactly. Like one guy might be focused on the kick and the snare, and the other guy might be focused on the high stuff, or vice versa.
Oh, and they could switch.
Exactly.
That was what was so awesome about them. They could switch, and you wouldn't know.
Right.
Because each could cover the other.
Yep. And each could cover the entire part if they needed to, but it's, you know, it's more full when there's both of them there and they can bounce off each other. But with the guitars, yeah, I was looking at the tablature and just seeing the difference between the Bob parts and the Jerry parts, and to me that was really illuminating. Like it really helped me out with seeing what he's doing. And with a lot of the Bob parts, I was even just I think it was last night when we were sitting on here, I just had that going on in the background and I'm just noodling along a little bit. And it was all just little like 2 and 3 note little phrases up high, but it's just little.
Well, that
little
whole
chords.
Bob Weir philosophy.
Yes.
That video you showed me the other night, that was all about Weir's approach.
Yep.
That was fascinating to see in that mind.
And there's a couple of different ones. I know that Stitch Method, who we look at a number of times here as well, with the big beard, for his channel, he does the Inside the Mind of Jerry Garcia. As one of He's got a bit of a
say beard, I think Kaladi.
In this case, with Stitch Method, he's got like his icon is actually, or his like his icon is actually also the beard, but it's got like the little gray patches right here and here, even in his the logo that he made. It's like got the full beard with the little gray patches.
Well, logo's got to represent.
Exactly. But that's the funny thing is that it is, you know, similarly he uses a logo with the beard because that is a big part of his whole look. But that's Stitch Method.
We got to
look it down.
We got to get you a logo.
There you go. I had the beard going last week. I mean, it's definitely it's too gray now.
I want to see the goatee.
Yeah, I mean, I did have the goatee for a long time. I'll show you some pictures because the pictures would be better than me trying to grow it again because it is so gray at this point that the goatee just doesn't look right when it comes in.
Oh, once you get comfortable with the gray, you turn into Santa Claus, I'm told.
I was actually just last week, and then when I trimmed it back, like I didn't even realize how long it had gotten. And when I trimmed it back, like I trimmed up one side, like, and I looked at the size of the hairs that were coming off. I was like, wow, that actually got a lot longer than I thought it did. But I do keep it about the same length as up top. So now it's super easy. Just, you know,
it is.
I'm all done.
I've been there a couple of times. I'm not going to lie. It was I can see why everybody wants to cut that shit. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. And I mean, I did have the hair long for a little while, but it's too thin for me on top. So like, it was just coming out to be that really sad, like thin old man ponytail. And I'm like, no, let's not do that.
Hey, don't knock the old man ponytail.
No, I said for me,
the rest of it falls off. I'll be that dude.
It was the thin old man ponytail. So it's just like a little rat tail in the back instead of being like a full bushy head of hair like it should be. And this was like, yeah, no. Like, let's not do that.
Yeah, I want to be able to make a ponytail. If I can't make a ponytail, then I don't have enough hair.
Yep. The first time I actually grew my ponytail out, or grew all my hair long, I was doing like a flat top on top and long in the back. So that was a long time ago. But when my dad hated my ponytail, he hated my ponytail. So like when I decided to cut it, I actually had my barber like, tie it up and like cut it so I could just go hand it to my dad. Say, here, you hated it so much, now you can have it.
Well, my dad only hated my hair a couple of times. I got a mohawk back in the 90s. Metalheads were basically shaving their sides.
Sure.
Pretty much a mohawk. And you just had a long top. My dad hated it. It was like one of the few times he never bitched about me having long hair. Some of our family was like, ooh, you got long hair, you're a troublemaker. My dad never gave me shit for that, but I got a mohawk, and for
that sends a different message.
Year and a half, he wanted nothing to do with me. Apparently somebody with a mohawk must have pissed him off.
I bet it was Mr. T.
I pity the fool.
I pity the fool. Now for these jam tracks, did you want to hear one? I'll go through one real quick and just see what we got here. Because in this case, again, these were ones that I was really enjoying playing along with.
How are we doing with Ange? After midnight.
Yep, it's after midnight. I think we're
I
still
don't feel like a pumpkin.
We're getting some things together over there, but in the meantime, we can just go ahead and crank through one of these. I was thinking about one of the Grateful Dead ones. Let me see what we got
here. Ooh, he's got all sorts of music theory.
Oh yeah, definitely. And this is just under the created playlist, so these are all broken down by the playlists already. So Santana backing tracks, Eric Clapton tracks, Grateful Dead.
Organized dude.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing I like about him. Getting everything together.
It's the key to like a YouTube presence.
Let's go take a look at the Friend of the Devil playlist here and see what we have.
They
Apologies
say
for
durable
those
is the new black. Okay, no
All
one says
this
that.
shit is hard.
Oh, absolutely. And these all kick right in, I believe. They give you the good chord stamps, good structure to work on.
Oh, I love the presentation.
the devil. Definitely like that. I enjoy the layout there, and just again, very simple song, very well laid out in terms of the structure and all that, and just nice and easy to go through. Definitely cool. One of my favorites. And like I said, on his site, he's got that is Jeff Williams Guitar is the site, and he has just tons of jam tracks, things to play through like that, things that are well put together that give you a good vehicle to solo over or to work on your rhythm playing right over the top of that. So
yeah, I was looking at the chords there. It'd be awesome, if it lit up like karaoke style, because jumping into a groove, I can, if I see it, like it's like karaoke for some people. They'll just put it up in front of them on the screen. I remember enough of the words so that the few words I don't are there, and you can sing in real time with that kind of presentation. Some of the learning software, when you go through these songs with the learning software, it will light up in the chords, and you can jump into the song anywhere.
Exactly. Gets right into the exact timing of everything, just where you want it. Definitely cool. And
but that was D major, right? Like overall, the scale was D major, because that was the. But it had to be D
focused
major.
in G, actually. It was focused in G. G, C, and D were the major chords they were using throughout. So G would be the 1 and the C was the 4. So it was mostly a 1 to 4 back and forth vamp with the G and the C. And then when it went to the other parts there.
On the little part change.
Yeah, I was just dropping back there. There was a D and A minor and D and A minor and D and A minor back and forth like that when it was doing the solo in G major over the top. And then back to
It's funny, sometimes that's easier to figure it out than trying to jump into the groove.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the other thing is that just looking at the entire song, there were really only those maybe 4 or 5 chord stamps throughout the whole song. So if you can play a D and you can play a G and you can play a C and you can play an A minor, that's the whole song. And it's just a matter of
if you can play one
following the
chord.
timing. Yeah.
If you can play one chord, then you can play all chords.
Yeah,
eventually.
Exactly. Especially on the guitar, because again, it's that claw. You can move that claw from here to here to here. Like if you were playing a G down here at the 3rd fret, you could play it as I need volume for that though. You can play the G down here at the 3rd fret, and then you can go all the way up to the. You play the other chords up higher, and you get the same kind of a thing. Just jumping from one place, same claw up further on the neck, or you can just stay in one place, like we were talking before. Keep it efficient. You can do the G here, and the C and D right on the G at the 3rd fret, C at the 3rd fret, and D at the 5th fret. Keeps them all together nicely. But I think that's probably about enough of us.
Now we're going to make some electronic chords.
Exactly. We're going to have soul.
Time for some electronic chords.
Bring in some electronic for us. I think that'd be a bonus. Good thing to do on a Thursday evening about this time.
Where's the mask? Show me the mask.
I see the mask.
There's the mask.
How's it going, Soul?
I'm good. How am I sounding?
Sounds good.
Good.
That's good.
Good. Yeah, because I always change my settings and stuff, so I'm just like checking.
We all do.
Could bring it down like 10%.
Yeah.
It's almost jet level.
How about now?
It does come out.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was pretty loud.
No, this is good now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some good stuff lined up for us on a playlist tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a few good songs there. Yeah, it's some good stuff.
Very cool, man. We'll let you get into it then.
Alrighty. Thank you.
All right.
I can see it in your eyes. The X's are ready to go.
Yeah.
Exactly. Take care, man.
Alrighty.